Live. Okay. Brian,
Hello.
how are you doing, buddy?
Good. I've just been busy. I just got back from New York. I was there to celebrate my birthday and did like a cool little brewing event at Stay Coffee. That was fun. But otherwise, kind of just hanging in there, doing work and also coffee stuff. So it's kind of been a bit everywhere, but I've been having a lot of fun.
And
And
so how old are you now?
I am now 26, so
26. Man.
yes, I'm old.
You know what, Brian? Times flies. Okay, times flies. Times.
Yeah,
By the way, hello and welcome back. If you're joining us, I'm here with Brian Quan. I know Brian for what 2 3 years now. Okay. Brian used to work for Fellow, and now he's moving on to bigger and better things right now. He's working for Xlum, and also he's working on a new project. Okay, tell us
yeah.
about your new project,
So what
Brian.
I've been working on is this thing called the Asia Roasting Project. So basically, it is a it's a coffee roasting business project, however you want to call it. But essentially, what it is I have a business partner, and we work with a lot of roasters from Asia to recreate that roasting profile. So, the for example, if you want to buy coffee from Taiwan's a good example of this, or Hong Kong or any of these places. If you want to buy coffee from those roasteries, it's pretty difficult to actually get that into the states. Um, Shipping and all of that, it's very hectic. So one idea that we had was like, how do we just take that flavor profile that you can find from these roasters and recreate it here? Because personally, at least when I think about roasting styles, roasting profiles, all of that, I think a lot of value, at least somebody's perception or their culture, how they taste things, how they grew up, all of that influences how they roast coffee. I think a lot of those things translate to you somehow when you brew the coffee. A lot of people, for example, currently go and buy the same green but roasted by a variety of different roasters, and you can understand a lot from tasting somebody's roast of a coffee. And for me, I really wanted to bring some of that, tap into, I guess, my culture and a lot of the Asian cultures in the coffee world, and try to bring that flavor profile here to the states. And what we do basically is we partner with a variety of these coffee roasters, and they you can go. It does not see you. Sorry, my housemate walked by.
That's fine.
Yeah, and what we do is we basically have these greens. We send them out to Asia. They roast the coffee, and they send us the profile back, and we basically recreate that roasting profile here. So we're able to have, for example, in this today we're going to do we have one green coffee, but
Yep.
it has multiple roast profiles. So there are two different roast profiles in this tasting set, and they will taste different because, as it turns out, how you roast coffee changes a lot of different things in the cup. So what's been interesting for me is to be able to taste, say, an American roast of some of these coffees, and also some of these Asian roasting profiles. The simple difference that I have observed with a lot of American roasters
Mhm.
and a lot of Asian roasters, even on the same coffee, is how roasters play with acidity and sweetness. I
Ah.
think, for example, if you drink, say is my personal
Yep.
favorite roaster, very upfront acidity. A lot of American roasters, I feel, emphasize acidity and brightness, punchy flavors, which I think is fantastic in today's landscape of light roast
Mhm.
coffee, all of that. However, I think what's been really interesting is a lot of Asian roasters seem to focus on sweetness. I'm
Yes.
generalizing, I'm
Yep.
drastically generalizing the differences, but just think about cuisines. A
Yep.
lot of Asian foods, pretty sweet, right? I like to use this example at times, which is like, Coca-Cola existing. Like Coca-Cola is a very American thing, I feel. There's sweetness in there, but it's like acidity, sweetness and acidity. Whereas like, milk teas and flavored teas in Asia, right? Like there are very interesting things in cuisines across the cultures. And that influences people's perspectives on how they roast coffee and they're, like what you are tasting. So anyway, that's like my quick TLDR of what this has been. This specific tasting set is a washed Ethiopian limu coffee. It is actually a very straightforward coffee. I think this is like, it's a lower point score coffee, like 82, 83 points.
Uh-huh.
But it is not a very complex coffee. And that actually will work out for what we're trying to do today, where you should be able to taste the difference between these two different roasting profiles. One of these roasting profiles is from Mojo Coffee, which is from Taiwan. And then the other one is from Momokawa, which is a roaster from Macau. And they're very different roasting profiles. And currently we're just working on a lot of East Asia. That's just because my business partner and I are most familiar with like Taiwan, Hong Kong, Macau, all of that. But eventually we're going to try to move over to Southeast Asia,
Yep.
Korea, Japan, and all of that. But that is the bigger gist of what this is. We just released a new tasting set as well, which is a Hamasho Natural with two different roasting profiles. But for a lot of people, this is going to be one of the first few times where you're able to taste, I think, a more Asian perspective on coffees, as well as even in a tasting set, just in general, I think it's really cool to have a single green with multiple roasting profiles. So it's just like, here's the same coffee, but you can definitely taste how roasters are manipulating that flavor profile. Currently, we work with a roaster in San Jose to help, because I'm in the Bay Area, so
Yep.
we work with a roaster that helps us execute all of this. And but a lot of this has been very interesting. It's been very interesting to work with a lot of these Asian roasters, and we are able to recreate their roasting profile. I want to say like 95% to like almost 100%. Like when we cup them recently, this specific coffee, we did a production roast of it, brought it back to Taiwan, at least with Mojo here, had him taste his coffee. Like basically, let me explain how it exactly works again to catch everyone up. So we all pick a green coffee, and what the green coffee comes from here, at least currently, we have a roaster I work with. We use some of those greens. We send those greens to Asia. They roast that coffee, and then they send it back to us, and we basically have that profile and that coffee, and we cup it, and we basically are like, okay, well, how do we create this? And or sorry, we do a production version of that roast that they send us, and we cup it against the real roast that comes from Asia and the roast that we create here. And we try to make them taste as close as possible. We're not going to be exact. We try to roast on the exact same roaster. In this case, we're on a Probat. But basically, we try to match up the roast as closely as possible on a flavor perspective, and we've gotten really, really close. And we then send our production version of it back to Asia, and then they cup it, and they're like, "Oh, wow, this actually." We've had roasters who are like pretty surprised with how close we're able to replicate their style, and that's been really cool as well. Is to have roasters taste our recreated version of their roast next to their real roast, and are like, whoa, it tastes basically the same. And that's really cool. So it is possible to recreate somebody's roasting profile, of course, with their blessing. They send us the profile, they help us QC, they help us do all of that. But yeah, that's kind of the gist of what this is. Yeah, we're I don't know, it's just something new that I worked on. I'm really happy and grateful for everybody who has ordered the coffees. And this is effectively a very small business, so would really appreciate it if anybody picks up some of these coffees. but yeah, it's just two people. It's just me and my partner.
Yep.
His name is Dave. So he's been great because he handles a lot of the he goes to Asia all the time and he works with these roasters, whereas I do the marketing and I do the website and all of that. So it's been a very interesting project to work on, but that's what we have now. And it's real, and we have the coffees here, and you have the coffees as well. So I think it'd be fun for us to brew and all of that and see what happens.
So, Brian, so is that one of those your passion project?
This is something I've been pretty interested in. Okay. I just think in the current landscape of coffee, at least when I look at me, I have a very American perspective on coffee.
Yes. Yep.
And it's been interesting looking at Asian perspectives of coffee and tasting that. For me, I just really enjoy brightness. I enjoy acidity. But tasting some of these different coffees roasted from Asia, like going to Asia and buying those coffees and even tasting recreated versions of those here, it's a very different perspective. And I have learned a lot. I'm like, whoa, this is quite interesting tasting some of these coffees. And doing this project has really helped me shape some of give me a more, I would say, broader perspective on flavor profiles and what exists out there.
Okay, so what do you recommend comes to the time of the brew time?
So what I would recommend for this tasting set, so these coffees, if you actually look at the beans,
Yep.
They're decently light.
Yep.
We're not super ultra light, but we're pretty light in the context of all coffee. As most people are drinking a lot of darker stuff. So there is going to be acidity in here. It's going to be a light roast. So generally speaking, I am brewing around 2.5 to 3 minutes.
Okay.
What I would recommend you do is use the same dose, the same recipe, and brew both of the coffees. These are the nice thing about these coffees, of them not being ultra high score point coffees and not the lightest roast in the world, is that they're easy to brew. You can use the same recipe on both of these coffees. I actually suggest you use the same recipe on both of these coffees. And what you do afterwards is just taste the differences. So I would suggest, at least for the purposes of this tasting, to do a 12-gram dose on both of these coffees. I like 92 Celsius.
Okay. 90.
92.
You got it.
So slightly on the lower side. And then I would just do I think it doesn't really matter what recipe you use as long as you are using the same recipe for
exactly
both.
Correct. So I'm going to be using the Pietro grinder.
Mm-hmm.
And then what grinder are you going to use?
I'm going to use it's not in the camera here, or my phone can't see it, but I'm going to use this option 001 to the side here.
Sounds good.
Use the same grinder, use the same everything.
Yeah. So right now we are brewing. I'm going to be using the Oria V3 with the Pietro grinder, and then I'm using the 12-gram dose at 92 Celsius.
Yeah. And try to keep track of which one or which one is which, so you can because there are some things that there actually is information on these. And the profiles are very different between these two. So I'll set up as well.
If you guys are just joining us, we are hanging out with Brian Quan from Asian Roasting Project. Yeah.
And then I also even have the same two glasses and carafes. But my V60s are a different size today, but
Yep.
I'm going to brew the same on both of these. But yeah, I think comparative tasting is one of the most enjoyable things to do in coffee.
I know. You know what? I love comparison. Okay.
But have you been able to taste the same green with different roasting profiles before?
No, this is my first.
Yeah, so
I'm very excited. Yeah. How do you like the O1 so far, Brian?
What? Oh,
How do you like the O1?
I think it's great. It's I really like it for espresso. I think filter, it's a little. I mean, it's really good, but it's super balanced. So
Ah,
I think if you're into like very balanced balanced brews, the Mizens are really great. But it's a really nice grinder. I'm quite happy with it.
so you like down better than P100?
I think I think it depends on what I'm brewing. I think for espresso, I actually got this to pair with the Flat Max,
Okay.
and I think they pair really well. At least for espresso, they provide very different flavor profiles. So that's kind of what my goal was to have a very different presentation. But also, it's really easy to use because it's got an ionizer and all of that. It's clean.
All right, let's brew some coffee here.
Yeah, so I'm going to try to brew both at the same time while
Yep.
I'm getting this ready on my end. Two scales as well.
So I'm brewing on Oria V3,
Mhm.
and then you are using the V60.
I'm using V60. But just do the same recipe for both of these coffees and
Yep.
we'll taste the differences. So that's what I'm going to do right now.
So we are doing pretty much 1:16 ratio in a way.
Recently, I've been brewing a lot of 12-gram doses.
Okay.
For me, I just want to taste a lot more coffees throughout the day. So
Yep.
doing the lower dosages has really helped. It lets me brew more coffee throughout the day and consume similar amounts of coffee. But yeah, in my mind, I'm either doing 4 50-gram pours or kind of like a 50-gram. For this coffee, I'll probably do like a 50-gram bloom and then like a really slow pour up to 200. I find with a lot of at least these coffees that we've been working on, I like slower pours, things that emphasize sweetness, because I think a lot of the roasting profiles from Asia do emphasize sweetness in some sort of way. But for the purposes of comparative tasting, just try to keep your recipe very similar across the two coffees.
Exactly. Yes.
But this is just a very standard, straightforward washed Ethiopian coffee,
Yep.
and I think this was like a really great choice on at least on my end, because it makes tasting super straightforward. You don't need to be a super taster to taste the complexities of like a washed Panamanian geisha. This is just a full Ethiopian.
Just under 3 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
So this one, so my yellow cup here. So this on my yellow cup is the roasting from Macau.
Okay, so that is the Momokawa one, and then the other one is going to be Mojo.
Mojo.
Yeah, and we do these. These labels are actually made from a little label maker, and we stick them on, and it's it's pretty fun. Yeah, production of coffee is definitely hectic.
So how people is going to purchase this coffee? Is your website or Instagram?
Yeah, we have a website. It is arp.coffee, Asia Roasting Project.com.
There we go.
We have a new tasting set because we did this wash coffee, and now we have a Hamasho Natural from two different roasting profiles. Basically, what I've kind of been doing with these tasting sets is one roasting profile emphasizes acidity, and the other roasting profile emphasizes sweetness. So that's exactly what we have today, where Mojo is going to emphasize sweetness, and the Momokawa will emphasize acidity. But at the end of the day, when you taste these, it's the same coffee. You just kind of see different pictures between different presentations of the roast. But yeah, feel free to try.
Okay.
My brews are wrapping up as well.
Wow. I'm not going to say right now, but okay.
Yeah.
This is interesting. The different roasting style. Same coffee beans.
Yeah, same coffee beans, different roastings, different roast profiles. So it's very interesting, from a roasting perspective, right? Like how I think you can understand a lot through what somebody likes or like what a roaster likes. But I would say that these still taste quite different to what I would classify as like an American third wave specialty roast.
So so obviously I know you're a big fan of Say Coffee, so which means you like their roasting style.
Yes.
Right? The style of their coffee.
Yeah. So I just like using Say because Say is like very out there in terms of roast profile anyway against a lot of other roasters. They're pretty light, bright, clean, crisp acidity.
Yep.
A lot of, for example, these roasters, they're going to focus more on sweetness. Yes, some of these roasters are going to have like maybe, more pushed up acidity, but still not as vibrant or punchy as something like a Say or in a Poland's Gold or, like a Manhattan or September, for example, but different. So let's see. I'm going to give this a taste now.
Yeah, give it a try.
So for me, these smell definitely pretty floral. Standard washed Ethiopian stuff going on here.
This is a Mojo. Wait, no, it is a it is a Mojo, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Mojo. It's sweet.
Mine is Mojo on the right here.
Yep.
So pretty different is what I'll say. You can tell you're tasting the same coffee, but I guess we can start with you. usually what I like to do is like what is different at the very beginning all the way to the aftertaste, and I think
Okay.
these are very
Okay.
different.
But with the Mojo, I can see the sweetness right up front.
Yeah.
Okay. I can definitely see the sweetness. Obviously, very clean, very pleasant. Okay,
Hmm.
very pleasant. I mean, I think I can drink this if I give it to my friends. I think this, even like nice tea, right?
Hmm.
Nice tea quality there. But with this one here, this
Momokawa.
Momo Momokawa. What's Momokawa? This is the roaster.
This is the roaster. So
Okay.
Mojo was the roaster. They're based in
Yeah.
Taiwan. Momokawa is based in West.
So this one has a acidic, right? Little
Yes.
bit of
This
bitterness up front.
Yes, right up front there is acidity. So that's the kind of interesting thing is like I think these two. So that's why it's a tasting set. Let's comparative because I think they're both on completely different ends.
It is.
Yeah, but you can still tell it's like it's the same coffee, but it's like where that acidity appears and what is emphasized is completely different between the two.
I
Um,
mean, personally, I really like the Mojo. Okay,
mm,
because I mean, as an Asian, as a Korean man, I really like the sweetness.
yes, it is very sweet.
I mean, that's remind me of when I was a kid.
Hmm.
My mother made me this, this barley tea. Okay,
Hmm.
even like a roast, end of night. Once we make rice, okay, on the bottom there, all the burnt rice, put some water in it, boil it,
Mm.
somewhat sweet, very pleasant, very comforting. Okay,
Hmm.
very
Yep,
comfort. But this coffee here, Momo
Momokawa.
Momokawa, got bitterness up front, but it's not as comforting,
Hmm.
but it's still clean.
Yeah. So I think this one is more in line with what a lot of American roasters are doing. Maybe not exactly the same, but it reminds me of that style. The difference here actually is also age of the two roasters.
Yep.
So Mojo, he's a bit older. He's from Taiwan, but he's a bit older than Sam from Momokawa. So people, there's about I think about a 10-year age gap between the two. So that's
Okay.
also something I've observed is like you know the age at which you are in tasting coffees, and it's like your perspectives are quite different. But I think a lot of older people or different. This is like a generation thing. A lot of people prefer, of course, people prefer darker roasts, but generally speaking, it's like a flavor preference difference. Whereas like a lot of younger folks, will, that's
Yep.
like what specialty coffee is, right? People are
Yep.
going to like that acidity, that
That's
brightness.
right.
Very different. Um,
So,
but
what do you prefer?
so personally, I prefer the Momokawa.
Okay.
Um,
Okay.
because I like, I like say, right? I like these I like these lighter roast coffees.
Sure.
Um, but working with these roasters and tasting, for example, this Mojo here, I'm like, oh, this is so different, right? This has really allowed me to increase my appreciation just for roasting styles in coffee. Honestly, across the board, it's like this is so interesting. Well, how did they come to this conclusion that this is their perspective in coffee? Um, I personally, I like the Momokawa stuff because it's brighter acidity, it's
Yep.
upfront, louder. But I really enjoy this Mojo roasting profile because it's sweetness emphasized. It's like,
Yep.
when was the last time you had a coffee? Like most of the roasters I buy from, they're not doing roasting profiles like this, right? They're doing more upfront, brighter coffees or like balanced,
Yep.
clean. Um, I think the Mojo is interesting to me because it's a very stylistic roast profile. It's very stylistically different than other roasting profiles, and that's like what I've been finding with a lot of of course there are like roasters that do this all the time, but like in a comparative tasting to be able to have one that is more, I would say, comforting, and then one that is more, well, I guess like comforting or normal to like a lot of lighter roast acidity enjoyers, and like a very stylistically different roast profile. is really, really fun. For me, it is so fun to be able to, create a business that can actually offer these types of things. At least I say that as a coffee enthusiast, right? I'm like, great, yeah, go and buy the coffees, guys. That'd be awesome. But more so, like, it is fun to do this. Like, it is super fun to have same coffee, two different styles, and to be able to taste the differences here. And it's like you don't need to faff around and do you don't need to have a very fancy recipe to actually brew these and enjoy it. Of course you can cup them, that is, you're welcome to cup them, but to just brew things side by side, taste it and be like, whoa, that is so different. Or what is different? Is it the acidity? Is it the sweetness? Is it the body? Is it the finish? Where are those differences? I think that is just really, really enjoyable to do as a coffee enthusiast. So
But
yeah.
Brian, but think about it. I mean, as a coffee hobbyist, right? I mean,
Hmm.
as you can see, even with the same coffee beans, with the two completely different tasting notes.
Hmm.
Okay. But as a coffee hobbyist, it's hard to navigate, right? There's thousands and thousands of coffee roasters out there.
Yeah.
I mean, I bet you, some roasters just fit into your lifestyle, okay, your
Mhm.
taste bud, you
Yeah.
know. But what are you gonna? I mean, so what do you recommend to these people? Okay, just try everything, or I mean, it can be overwhelming, right?
Yes. Yeah. So that's also why, at least with the tasting sets that I've made for here, is I'm still picking a coffee that I would, a roasting profile that I would classify as a daily drinker, comforting roasting profile. So that's like what this Mojo profile is.
Oh yes, I mean this one. I mean, I can drink this
Easy to
every
drink.
morning. Yeah, that's easy, right?
Yeah, because generally
Yeah.
speaking, at least in my experience, normal, like, not crazy weird coffee nerds like you and me, normal people enjoy sweetness. Normal people don't want to taste coffee and be like, this is sour or this is like, ugh, they want a comforting cup. But what's nice about some of these profiles, and we do find a lot of roasters do this even in the States, is create a very comforting cup that still emphasizes the origin characteristics of the coffee and whatnot, but still stylistically is its own. In this case, it is this very emphasized sweetness, and I think this Mojo, right? You can hand it to most people who don't drink specialty coffee, and they can taste it, and they're probably going to be like, that actually is pretty
Pretty
sweet.
good.
It's
Yeah.
normal.
Yeah.
And this is a light roast, right? Like, this is a light roast. And most people in their light roast is acidity world in
Yeah.
all of that. But yes, this has acidity, but because it's so sweetness emphasized, I think it is quite comforting for normal people. So that's why in the context of the tasting set, right? I want to give you the coffee that is very easy to drink, that is approachable, that you can understand. And then there's this Momokawa is like what I would classify as a more traditional third wave specialty light roast coffee that emphasizes acidity. So that's the same thing in this new tasting set that I just released. One coffee is going to emphasize sweetness, one coffee is going to emphasize acidity. They're going to be different. And that's just, but that's also just how these roasters, that's their style of roast anyway. Like, if you went and bought Momokawa coffee from Macau, you went to that shop and you bought their coffee, it would have this similar presentation. Same thing with Mojo. And that's what's been really cool, is to be able to take that perspective on coffee and all the different culture and things people have tasted in their life that have formed their palate to how they've learned how to roast coffee, and take that perspective and bring it here to the States, has been really, really rewarding. It's been awesome to be able to get these coffees out there. And I think what's been cool is we've gotten a lot of feedback from people. We're small, it's two people. And people are like, wow, that actually tastes different than what I thought it would taste like, or that tastes different than like what my American roasting, American roasters I purchased from, or European roasters I purchased from. And this is just that different perspective that I want to put out there on coffee. And there's no right or wrong perspective on coffee, but
Yep.
it's just, it's a different thing, and I want people to try it, and that's interesting to me. But yeah, that's like my big pitch on what this Asia roasting stuff is. But it's been really fun.
Hey, Brian. So I mean, can you think of in U.S. roaster that's sweetness focused?
Yeah. Let me think. I think I actually think of the lighter stuff that what I'm really into is I actually quite like Flower Child.
Okay,
Preston,
flower. Okay.
he gets the same greens as Say. But if you taste his coffee next to Say's roast, I think his is sweeter, or his
Huh.
emphasizes sweetness. It is bright. It could be perceived as acidic and all of that, but overall sweetness. I also think I'm trying to think of one. Oh, Broadsheet Coffee out of Boston or Massachusetts. They focus on a lot of sweetness forward coffees, but it just seems like a lot of but also like a lot of roasters um I think still want to focus on that like upfront acidity, which is great. I mean, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. But generally, like even if you go to like roasters from Japan, some of those roasters focus on this type of coffee, like this mojo roasting style, which is like sweetness bumped up. Generally, it's like yeah, generally like most of the coffee roasters I purchase from though are still in that more brighter vibrancy focused category. um, but it's kind of a bit everywhere. I mean, this is just more coffee to taste and drink. I still have my own personal preferences, but at the end of the day, like I am trying to bring in a different perspective, and that's what's been fun for me is to taste the coffee that is out of my comfort zone of coffees that I would taste, right? And be able to say like, hey, this is a different perspective on the same coffee, and this is something we should respect, and this is something that we can also enjoy. And at the end of the day, there's no right and wrong, right? um, but yeah.
So how many sets are you working on right now? So this obviously this is the one set here. How many sets people can expect if they go to your website?
So right now we only have one set, but
Okay.
you can get the coffees individually as well. Um, we are going to do more coffees across the year, but right now we're trying to keep things simple and just do. Right now I'm trying to see like, hey, are people interested in the different roasting profiles of the same coffee? Before we actually had 5, 6 different coffees,
Okay.
and they were all great, but you couldn't do a comparative tasting of any of these. So what we're trying to push now is say, hey, let's try to see if we can do the same green, but with different roasting profiles, like this tasting set you're tasting here, and see if that actually interests people. Um, it seems kind of counterintuitive to purchase. It's like, why am I buying the same coffee, but I'm getting like 2 of the same coffee? But I think what is really interesting is still that roasting profile is like that's what I think is fun about this. And I haven't really, I've only seen this done once elsewhere. I did see in Canada there was an Indian coffee set that was roasted uh, with 3 different roasting profiles. But I kind of wanted to be the only one to have a readily available set that you could comparatively taste. So that is like I don't know. I think that's fun, but we'll see if it works because we don't want to spend all this time and work on stuff that nobody actually likes the tasting sets. Then maybe we'll have to look at something else.
So
But
so 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 pretty much you're saying is that this your set is for not regular people. I'm talking about more for coffee hobbyists like us, right?
I think it's kind of a bit of both. Right
Okay.
now, the focus is definitely the people buying the copies are they definitely enthusiasts.
Yep.
Um, but not every single most I still think most enthusiasts trend more towards um, where I want to kind of catch enthusiasts is people kind of learning how to taste coffee and learning about what is roasting or what different roasting profiles, because I look at this and I'm like, wow, I didn't even if I was a beginner and I tasted this same coffee and I brewed the same way, and you could taste very different presentations of the same coffee. I think that would be really helpful to people starting out, as much as people who are kind of tied in with like learning about this from me. And, obviously I would classify myself as like in a very small niche set of people, small subset of people who are purchasing very expensive premium coffees, the true, crazy nerds. I don't really think these coffees are for them,
Okay.
because I think people are going to want more complexity. They're going to want lighter roast, all of that. And that's a different perspective than what I'm trying to push this towards. Is I still think there is a bigger group of people who can benefit from tasting these. And I'm not trying to compete against a Say or a Flower Child with these coffees. That's very different. I just thought this was a very different perspective, and I wanted to offer that out there. And I think it's still trending more towards normal, maybe like beginner enthusiast or
Sure.
like people in the middle of their journey. You don't need anything fancy to brew these coffees.
Exactly.
I don't think.
So Brian, do you see yourself, okay, like down the road? I mean, do you want to like being a roast? I mean, owning a roasting company? That's part of your plan, or
I probably not.
okay?
So I've gotten this question a lot from people, which is like, "Hey, will you ever open your cafe? Will you ever open a cafe? Will you ever do a roastery?" I don't think so. Not yet. I haven't really shared this much like in any content on my
Mhm.
end, but we can talk about. I feel like I talked about this the last time I was chatting with
Yeah.
you. Still, my goals as a coffee professional, as like a newer coffee professional or whatever you want to call it, is like my focus is the perception of value of coffee.
Yep.
Um, Most simply put, I think at least in America, I don't think people are valuing coffee enough, either from a monetary perspective or from just anything. It's like, what do people think about coffee, right? A lot of people, it's like there's so much more to coffee than just it being like a black liquid or anything like that. And um, my kind of focus with at least my career, because I do think it's possible to do something with my time in coffee. I really just want to work on that perception of value of coffee. I want people to actually think coffee is valuable. Currently, I think the way that value is communicated in coffee is through taste. Um, I can spend all the time in the world telling you about a beautiful wash panamanian gesture that
Yep.
was roasted by a top roaster in the world. But if you cannot actually taste the difference, or you cannot taste what that work is done, then I feel like everything that I have explained to you has been lost in some sort of way. And there are a lot of different things, which is like, where is value communicated in the supply chain, where like what is actually valuable to the end consumer of coffee. And currently, I think the thing that ties everything together is still taste. Is like people still have to be able to taste what it is, and that is where we go into very deep conversations on what are producers doing, coffee processing, even comparing coffee to wine. But just generally speaking, I just think that most people don't understand the value and the I just think people think I want people to think coffee is valuable. Like that is just the simple thing that I'm trying to do with my career. How I achieve that, I don't know yet. Is it through a coffee machine? Is it through a coffee business? Is it through making content on the internet? I don't know, right? But that's kind of just my simple goal with whatever I have. But I think it's possible to accomplish something like that.
I
Shift
mean,
move
I
the needle
think
in some way.
I don't know because here's the thing because I've been inviting a lot of my coffee friends, right? They love coffee. The whenever I invite to my space, I
Mm.
made them a tasting sets. Okay,
Yeah.
wash coffee,
Hmm.
like natural coffee, even like fermented coffee. In the end, I finished up with like macchiato, okay, and
Mm.
shut up caramel.
Mm.
All that stuff, they still love that milk and sugar, okay.
Yes.
Somehow we have to change. I don't know how, but hey, that's fine. But that's like more like dessert coffee. But if you want to enjoy the true essence of
Yeah.
coffee,
So So what I would say to that is that I still think I still think this part of this is a generational thing. A lot of people are just used to that type of coffee. I'm not saying we should get rid of Starbucks, and I'm not saying like all coffee should only be like black coffee or whatever,
Yep.
right? I'm just saying is like I guess like an easy example to use, and I've been trying to like flesh this example out a little more. Is I look at something like ramen, or
Yep.
you look at sushi. So let's get ramen. There is cup noodles, 50 cents to $1, and you
Yep.
have $20, $30 bowls of ramen. I think most consumers understand that there is a quality difference between those two things, even though they are effectively the same thing, right? It's noodles and soup, same thing. You look at coffee, and I don't think most people know. First of all, coffee is a fruit. I didn't even know coffee was a fruit until I spent $1,000 something on a coffee machine. I was like, I didn't even know that, right? It's like how could I have spent all this money and time learning how to brew coffee and not even
Yep.
know coffee is a fruit, right? Like that's a whole other problem. But it's like in coffee, it's like instant coffee versus whole beans, or instant coffee versus specialty coffee. I think most people think it's the same thing. Or like even in professionals, you ask professionals, they're like, that is the quality difference between commodity grade coffee and specialty coffee. But I don't think that price difference or what is like there. It's like specialty coffee and commodity coffee uh, pricing is quite similar. Yes, you can find places that's twice as expensive, but like you'll look at some of these things that we consume, and you look at how good like the quality and value things are not equally scaled essentially.
Yes. Yep. You're
Um,
right.
and that is the thing that I'm like, whoa, how is this possible that we've had, I'm just like, how is that, like, why is that the way it is? And should that change? I think it should change. I think specialty should be significantly more expensive. But also you look at, there's so many different conversations to go into. Like, it is a very deep, intricate thing. But it's just like, I think still there is an education gap. And also, I think there's also a huge gap in terms of, I mean, like, where that value can be communicated. So it's a very deep conversation, and I'm still figuring it out. But that's like, my brief example is just like I think people just don't know what
You know
is.
what? And I think
Sorry.
another perspective is we drink coffee in the morning, right?
Hmm.
Okay, and then we drink coffee. We drink wine in the afternoon or at night at time.
Hmm.
Okay, calm down. We want to calm down. Relax. We drink wine, so we value wine tremendously.
Yes.
Okay, we don't mind spending $30, $40 in a glass of wine.
Yeah.
Okay, but we drink coffee in the morning. We're always in a hurry. They want the quick
Mm.
caffeine fix. Okay,
Yeah.
we don't put any value to it because you don't get to relax. I mean, you and I do, right?
Yeah.
Throughout the day, we enjoy the process, enjoy making coffee, but most people out there, they just want to have cup and get out of there. So,
Yeah. So I think that perspective is because like we're both in the US, and there's a huge grab and go culture. Um and that's been a huge thing, as even like instant coffee, like it should be now, fast, right?
yep,
But I do think that there are certain cultures, and that's in Asia and also parts of Europe. I mean, you look at it basically, it's like, what is a culture's and country's view and respect towards craftsmanship?
yep,
I think, in the States here, it's not that good compared to a place like Japan, right? The Japan example is definitely very out there, but it's like you can go and sit down at a cafe and have an experience, and somebody will brew coffee in front of you. Like baristas there, I think are it's like, wow, these guys are masters of
yep,
coffee, right? So that's like one thing, and the second thing is also price sensitivity in coffee, because of generationally speaking, a lot of people who are, I would say, 40s plus or 50s plus now, you're used to drinking the darker roast coffees. You're used to like your 10 cents Folgers. You're used to that. That is how price sensitive you are to coffee. So when you have people who are like, oh my God, you should spend $5 on a cup of coffee, it's like you're out of your mind. Or even when like $6, $10, like you're insane. Whereas like, with wine, 10, $20 is, I don't really drink that much wine, so I don't know, but it's like my understanding is, that is nothing. That is
yep.
low, right? Um, and price sensitivity is very, very different between coffee and wine. And on top of that, if you look at coffee, the fact that you have to brew coffee, as it turns out, how you pour water over a coffee changes how it tastes. That is the most
Yeah.
ridiculous thing I've ever heard in my life, right? But it's like the level of accessibility between both of those beverages is significantly different. It's like you shouldn't have to spend a lot of money. I personally feel like you shouldn't have to be spending that much money on coffee stuff to actually make it taste like what it's supposed to taste like. But that's also why I controversial opinion, but I do think that's where processed coffees and advanced processing in coffees really really helps bridge that gap, because you shouldn't have to. I don't. I think, like, with wine and all of that, yes, you have to build a palate. Yes, you have to understand how things taste, and you have wine tastings and all of that. In coffee, you taste things. It's like, well, what if you just brewed everything wrong, right? Then
Yeah.
like your perspective of coffee is completely different. But it's like that's where some of that processed coffee stuff, where it's like if you want to convert people from or showcase people who are like, it's like, wow, coffee can taste like fruits. That's where I think some of that carbonic maceration or anaerobic stuff is potentially quite useful. Whereas you give people like who don't have a coffee palate, you give them wash Panamanian Gesha. It's like, this tastes like a weekly brewed tea. Why is this
Exactly.
so
Yeah, you're
expensive?
right.
Right?
Yeah.
Why did this cup of coffee cost
Yeah.
me $15 and it just tastes like a weekly
Yeah.
product,
Yeah.
bad tea, right? So that there's a lot of challenges on price sensitivity, on the value between coffee and wine, and also even down to tasting both of those things. And that's why I think, like, I like, for me, that's why I joined the Xlum, working on the Xlum, is because, like, you can now at least solve one part of this problem, which is the brewing part. Or even, I like, for example, Commentator. It's like you are solving that problem of brewing, um, which is a huge challenge, because especially when you're learning about how to taste coffee, which is like, is this actually supposed is this actually supposed to taste like this? And people start second guessing yourself. You know, it's just like a lot of challenges. But I think if I take a really, really big step back, I still think if people thought this was more valuable in some sort of way, then I think this would benefit the entire industry. I don't know, in some, numerous ways, right? Like, if the thing we are drinking is worth more money, I think this is helpful across the supply chain. I don't know if that's me being naive and young and ambitious, but that's just how I feel. Eventually I'll back things up with numbers and whatever. We'll do that research and look into it. But that is just like how I feel. Like, that's my pulse on like industry perspectives on like what I want to do. And this is just another thing that's kind of in it, which is like, this is a different perspective and a different flavor profile and a different whatever. Hopefully you appreciate it. But overall, like, I'm still trying to work on this value, right? Like, perception of value. And I don't entirely know what the correct way to approach that is.
But here's the thing, though, because I don't think anybody try to attempt that. Just like wine bar, right? If you go to some big city, the wine bar, just go over there, intimate, setting, having a nice wine. They don't mind spending $30, $40 for a nice glass wine. But I don't
Mhm.
think anybody attempt to create a coffee bar, coffee lounge, to just go in there, spending $20, $30 and drinking some finest coffee in the world.
Yeah.
That
So
kind of experience.
yeah. So one, it's really hard to do in the U.S. I think people before my time, at least working in the industry, have attempted that, but COVID obviously killed
Okay.
off things. Um, I think in the US, there are actually a few areas in the country that have very strong coffee cultures, or
Mhm.
I would just say, normal people who are very into. They understand that coffee is valuable in some sort of way. Oftentimes, though, it is. This is something I'm still trying to figure out. Is like, when people spend $15-$20 on a cup of coffee, is it because it's like a fad, right? Like, oh, it's the most expensive thing, and you want to try it out. Like, you go to, for example, Proud Mary in
Yep.
Portland or in Austin, and you have that deluxe menu of coffee. Are you trying those coffees out because it's like spectacle, or is it that you actually appreciate that, right? So I still don't know what those differences are, and I'm still figuring that out, for at least normal consumers. But generally speaking, it's really difficult, to start a cafe. That's also, back to that earlier question we were talking about, which is like, would I ever start a cafe? Right? I don't know. But there are some people who are trying, and I think that is what is really interesting. I mean, I think at least in the past kind of year-ish of just traveling around, I think some coffee roasteries are doing fantastic jobs at presenting that coffee is valuable. Funnily enough, Onyx out of Arkansas, Onyx Coffee Lab, I find it fascinating. That is a very fascinating area where I would say very normal, like the most normal Americans, right? Not like people in the Bay Area where there's like, techies or like New
Yeah.
York pros, right? Like I would say in Arkansas, very normal people, they are going to a specialty coffee shop and they are actually spending decent money on coffee. And it's like people after sports games or church or whatever. And it's been very interesting. So it's like, I do think there are pockets of places in the US that have really strong local presence, and you have normal people who their first coffee they ever taste is like a specialty coffee, and I think people get accustomed to the taste, then they start understanding that it's valuable and whatever. But it's like, people, I don't think people need to get this deep like you and me to appreciate it, right? And that's kind of, it's like, I think that is the gap that I'm trying to close, is like, why, or figure out or understand, it's like, how do you actually get normal people, like what is missing for a normal person to say like, hey, this is valuable in some sort of way, whereas like, you look at wine or food, right? Like people understand that there is some of the food you eat is of higher quality, even if it's the same thing, right? Like sushi, gas station take sushi versus omakase, right? There is a quality difference between those two things. People understand that. How do we do that in coffee, right? And maybe am I crazy? And people already understand there's a difference, right? But I just think like, I think people, if I were to take a step back, I think, people do understand that there is a difference, but it's not. But people don't understand how drastically different it is in terms of quality, and that's like, where I think the value conversation can be had. But anyway, I don't know. I'm rambling. I'm caffeinated.
You know what?
So,
You have a right point because again, how, as like yourself, okay, convey that to regular people, right? Just people next door to you.
yeah.
There's difference between good coffee and regular coffee, right?
Mhm.
Buy from, but the real question is they actually care enough to think about that,
Right,
you
exactly.
know,
And
you know.
that's the gap I'm been thinking about, is like, how do you actually get people to care? Uh,
Exactly. Why should care, right? So I just want a coffee and just go to work, right?
yeah,
Or something, hold in my hand, drink some coffee at work or at home, just get ready for work. Why
yeah.
should I care about this coffee acidity, right? So
Right.
sweet.
So that's like the thing where I'm like,
Yeah,
okay, this is going to take a lot of time and probably my entire career, at least in America, to in the U.S. to think about. But like that is like a very interesting thing, and that is what I'm trying to focus my
yep,
my career on, is like, because I think if people actually cared, this would bump up the value of coffee. This would bump up the
exactly. You correct. Yep.
and I don't know anymore, like this year I think I'm trying to work with some of these professors, trying to do some more research, because all of this is how I feel, and this is like my perspective on, basically, I'm a consumer and enthusiast that has now been privileged enough to work in the industry, and it's like, how did I as a consumer have so many missing gaps in my knowledge of coffee, or like appreciation of coffee, that I had to go and work in coffee to start to appreciate it and all of that, right? And that is that gap of knowledge, or gap of, I would say, respect or value or whatever, that I think exists right now. And it's like, how do we how do we make how do we fix that? in some sort of way, right? And maybe it doesn't need to be fixed, or I don't know what the right answer is, but it's like that's just what my general that general feeling that I have now, at least. But who knows?
Oh man, that is a very deep conversation, right?
Yeah,
How can
it's
you put the?
complex
Yep.
conversation, and I just look at I just look at like what does the industry care about, and like the industry is like arguing over coffee competitions and super automatic latte machines. It's
You know
like
what? By the
I
way, so I interviewed Jay yesterday on
don't.
my live streaming, and then it is, isn't it? Right? And we are talking about the super automatic for the latte art championship for the next couple of years. And what is your thoughts on that, Brian?
I have not kept up with that.
Okay.
I literally was on a flight, and then I got back, or like I was like flying to New York, and then I got this. I was like got all these million messages. It's like, oh my god, it's a big problem. I think I so first of all, I don't know much about the very nuances of latte art competitions, but my understanding of world latte art competition is like it's like not actually people in the world who are competing there. I don't
Yep.
know. So like the competition's questionable is my understanding. And then second of all, um, I think there was a lot of expressiveness with
Yep.
how people steam milk. That's like a whole entire like all the latte art competitors can go into hours of
Yeah.
conversations on milk. So I do think the automated stuff does limit some of the expressiveness that a competitor
Sure.
can have, but at the same time, I don't really care too much. I think competition. So I think competitions in coffee are
Sure.
very weird. They're not fair in general, but like that's another whole weird. I have like some strong-ish opinions on that, but I
You
just
know what?
think
I mean,
yeah.
there's a big gap. Okay, big gap between the coffee specialist, coffee professional versus regular people.
Yeah.
I mean, that gap is huge. Okay, so I mean, I know what you're trying to do. I know you're trying to reduce the gap, right?
Mhm.
So now people can appreciate the coffee, which means you're going to elevate the coffee industry.
Right.
Means a barista is going to get paid more. I mean,
Mhm.
they look at it as not minimum wage job. It's an actual
Yeah.
professional job.
If it was like a career for people,
You can
but
sure.
it's like I think if coffee was considered to be more premium, more valuable,
Yep.
um, then this would benefit the industry as a whole.
Yep.
Again, I don't know if that's just me being ambitious, but I just look at it and I'm like, this is crazy that there's so much work that goes into every step of the supply chain, and people are there's so much price sensitivity in this. I'm like, I cannot believe that people don't understand like there's this work that's been done, and like I just did not feel like the people who came before me did a very good job, at least at scaling the price to the amount of I guess like to what it is, right? But that's also how young the industry is, right? It's like the fact that this has been like maybe 20-year-old industry at the most
Yeah,
means
that's
that
it. Yep.
my understanding is there was a price increase 10 years ago. There was a price increase between commodity and specialty. People were paying 2 times as much, but I felt like that should be even more. But then again, it's all down to economics. Other coffee businesses have caught up. Obviously, like you can go to a street that has a specialty shop and a Starbucks, and you can go buy a latte from both of those places, and a latte is going to be around the same price.
Yep.
But the margins are completely different. And also this amount of skilled labor at specialty coffee shops I think are a little stubborn, I think, in certain areas where I do think automation needs to happen. I don't know, that's also a controversial opinion which may upset people, but like it's like that there's so many like interesting things there, but it's like now specialty coffee is very accessible. It is extremely accessible. You can go to most places in the States and get specialty coffee. Um, so, but it's like people still think it's a normal coffee shop, right? Or it's
Right.
like a
Exactly. Yeah, you're right.
right, and it's like, but it's really not the same. like, but specialty coffee is such a small, it's still a very small
Yep.
percentage of global coffee consumption. So that's like another big problem. But I just feel like man, the quality. I'm like these people, professionals did a really great job at making it accessible. Now we need to make it more valuable. Even though I think people did a great job at making some of it valuable, I think it can be more. Um,
Okay. So by the way, so people just joining us, I'm talking to Brian Quan from Asian Roasting Project, and also uh, working with Xlum as well. So
yeah, I feel.
is there any exciting things happening at Xlum?
Yeah. So a big one is, at least for Xlum, is new coffees.
Okay.
So we actually have been releasing, so I oversee the product at Xlum for coffee, and we've been releasing new coffees every single 2 weeks. So a lot of premium coffees, a lot of very interesting coffees, and that's been great too because we are able to present some premium coffees without any, I would say, stress. Like if you bought, so this is a coffee we are featuring, or we just finished selling. It's a Wilton Benitez
Okay.
processed coffee. It's a great coffee. But to be able to have that automated brewer and for it to brew for you, it's pretty interesting because we have households who, um, where it's like one person just, it's like they don't need to know about the crazy brewing techniques of how to pour water or use the right grind size. They just want to taste some good stuff, right? It's kind of
Yep.
like your wine. Oh, crack it open or pop, do all of that. And that's like kind of what's been exciting to me is to put out more of those interesting flavors and see if people like them or not. Um, and then aside from that, yeah, it's just like more and more coffees. The frequency at releasing coffees, I think, is
Yeah.
what's interesting to me. But yeah, I mean, the reason why I work there is because it aligns with, like, most
Sure.
simply, it aligns with stuff that I am trying to do.
Sure.
Um, so I have no idea, but yeah, the that's what's cool with the Xlum stuff is new coffees
And
always.
by the way, is that true? Are you big into audio?
Yeah, I am.
So you're the one of those guys spending what, a couple $100 on audio cable?
Maybe not, not cables. I don't spend money on cables. But like, yeah, definitely the headphones and all of
Okay.
that. I Yeah, that's it's really interesting because I think with coffee, it's this hobby now is becoming very similar to like the audio hobby.
You
I
know
mean, obviously,
what?
subjective hobby. Like,
You know what? That's the thing. I mean, people are watching us right now. You think they think we're crazy, but it is. Okay. I mean, I have a Bravo Vista Pro here. Most people think that this is outrageous. Okay.
yeah, absolutely.
Okay, but now Brian, right next to him, he has a 100 what 2 millimeter flatbed grinder from Optional. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, and then that's one of many Brian has, and
Yeah.
also he has incredible coffee machines as well. So it's all different level. Okay, I mean I can see why. Okay, people really into coffee, really high into these gadgets and want the best.
Yeah.
Like start getting into audio, same thing, right? You know, I want the best amplifier or best headphone sets. Get the trying to get as much as you can comes to quality of sound. Just like coffee, right? You're gonna squeeze out every bit
Yeah.
of the quality in cup, you know?
Yeah. Like I think the enthusiast community, like the difference is like the enthusiast community here. Well, actually, I was going to say the difference, but it's not really a difference. I think the coffee hobby, at least on the gear end, is a very male centric hobby. Like a guy, I don't know, but
It
like
is, okay? It
it,
is. Let's not kid ourselves. I think I was talking to friends yesterday, more like 25 to like 35, 40. Okay? A guy with a professional job, single mostly, has
yeah,
money. That's it.
yeah. I mean that is me. So like I am down to spend money on the gear stuff. Like I think for a lot of people, they get in with the gear because a lot of people have that mentality. like what is out there, chasing the next best thing
Yep.
year end, and then now people then settle on getting into coffee. So that's like me. My experience is like get in with the gear, get all the fancy grinders, get all the machines, whatever, and then like now um, go into coffee and like dive deep into like, oh, how's the producer processing stuff and all of that. But that's just because like a lot of people are very passionate in that way, and enthusiasts are critical. Enthusiasts are very into these very minor details that people can go into conversations of like, well, how is the producer processing things? Oh, I don't like naturals, or I only like wash coffee, or whatever. People to
Yep.
create very personal subjective preferences, and I think that's been really fun. But like generally speaking, at least for me, it's like what do I find valuable, right?
That's right.
I really, really enjoy coffee. So if I really, really enjoy coffee, I want to have a grinder or pieces of equipment that can elevate that. For me, like this is a $3,000 or whatever. I don't even remember how it's just
Yep.
stuff. It's very expensive, but I want to have the maximum enjoyability of coffee. So for me, I look at it across a period of time. If spending this much money increases my enjoyment of everything, increases the average of good tasting cups, then I think that's worth it. Of course, like you don't need to do that to enjoy things, but it depends on your perspective. For me, it is completely worth it because it's like I want to maximize my enjoyment of things, right? And then you go into the deep conversation of like I want to maximize like the acidity or like the sweetness. Then people have hand grinders, and then it goes deep into that. But it's like whatever's worth it to you. I think people. It is worth it to look at what it is. But at the end of the day, grinders, gear, and all of that. They're diminishing returns. Depends on what you're aiming for. I don't think you need to spend as much money to enjoy the hobby. But for those of us who are that deep, it is super enjoyable. It is so
Yes.
fun to
I know.
like try everything.
So before I let you go, so how people find you on the web again? Your Asian
Yeah.
roasting company.
So I am on YouTube. You
Yep.
can actually Google me, which is cool. But yeah, I'm on YouTube. Actually, who put my name in here?
Yep.
But yeah, I'm right now. I just like been doing a lot of fun coffee content. I have no idea. Oh, I'm on that Sprudge. They had nominated me. That's hilarious.
That's awesome, buddy.
So you can go and vote for me there. It'd be really funny to win.
Yep.
So would if take a look at that. But otherwise, like I would still say I'm a coffee enthusiast. I do
Yep.
work in the industry, and my goals, at least from this past stream, has been shown. And then you can follow me. My name is Brian, and then we have this Asia roasting project
Yep.
stuff. Would appreciate you to check that out because we were doing a new release, and Hoon here was tasting the tasting set, and we have a new tasting set, so that'd be cool. But otherwise, like I'm trying to make a name for myself in the coffee industry as
You know what, Brian? You know what? You already named for yourself already. Okay, you are a huge influencer in comes to coffee industry. Okay, because you have huge influence. Okay, I
yeah,
mean,
I'm getting there. But
no,
yeah,
I mean, I feel like you're already there. Okay, I feel
yeah,
like you're already there. You're a very respect among the coffee hobbyists, and yeah, so yeah, I
yeah.
mean, I feel like you're already there.
Yeah,
All right.
but yeah, there's like a lot of work to be done in the industry, as Hoon and I have been talking about this, and a lot of that's what I'm trying to focus my
Good.
career. But it's been interesting to. I'll probably make some videos on this, but it's been interesting to even create a perspective like this in such a short
Sure.
period of time. Like for me, I've been a professional for 4 years. As the coffee is my first real job, and like it's been interesting to be able to like get to know all these people and even make a name, break into the industry in such a short period of time. So that's why I feel confident in things actually changing in the industry, or for there to be different influences on consumers, and all of that is like if we can, the industry is still so young and there's so much opportunity, but also there are things that I think need to be changed, and I think these are like kind of core things and things that I want to work on. So yeah, but I don't know. I hope everybody enjoyed hanging out with us. I've
Okay.
been looking at the chat here, but
By the way, I'm gonna big shout out to Joe and Mr. Rainbow for the super chat. I know you guys are very generous, and thank you. And also, oh goodness, we have Jay from Korea as well. The Korea coffee scenes are out of control. Okay,
yeah, that
Brian,
is.
you have to go. Yeah, Brian, you have to go to Korea. Okay, when you have time.
I really do want to go. This year I'm trying to do a bit of international travel, so I'm
Yep.
trying to do like Japan, Korea. I also need to go see some of these roasters that I work with
Yep.
on Asia project. But I don't know when. Right, things have been hectic. But been doing I'm kind of trying to build some more perspectives in coffee, and I need to kind of go to these places and look. Um, but yeah, there's like a very different cultures and cultural appreciation for coffee and craftsmanship and all of that, and I think that's a very worthwhile perspective to see.
Sounds good. Hey, if I don't talk to you, I'm gonna see you at the Chicago Coffee Expo.
Hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, I should be there. But I am planning on trying to make a trip out to Arizona in a
Okay.
little. So I if I'm there, I'll come say hello.
Sounds good.
Yeah, but
All right, buddy. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you so much for your worth of information. Okay. I'm gonna
yeah.
see you next time, buddy. All right. Talk to you soon. Okay. Bye bye.